Hello everyone, it's NotaNoobPat, and welcome to Perk Review. Today we're taking a look at the level 40 Élodie perk, Power Struggle. When you are being carried by the killer, Power Struggle is activated if you get to 25% wiggle progression. When the perk is active and the killer walks through a pallet, you can pull down that pallet and stun yourself off the killer's shoulders. The pro is fairly obvious as it's the ability of the perk. You can stun yourself off the killer's shoulders. This is obviously very unique and can be very helpful. However, this unique ability comes with a cost as there are many cons. First, this perk needs other perks to be viable. You at least need flip-flop to convert recovery to wiggle progression at a minimum. There's a perk review on that if you need a refresher, the link is in the description. Then, you will also likely need Unbreakable so you can increase recovery speed, or you need Tenacity so you can crawl to a pallet and recover at the same time. This means you're going to be using 2 to 3 perk slots just so you can use Power Struggle, and that's not great. Then, let's say you do get to activate this perk once. The killer is notified that you're using Power Struggle, and they're going to be unlikely to slug you again. They'll pick you right up after they down you and avoid walking through pallets. Most good killers don't walk through pallets anyways. Then, keep in mind, you are going to need pallets to throw down. This can lead to some awkward situations that I'll talk about in the examples, but also, at the end of the game, if you or your teammates have already thrown down a bunch of pallets, you won't have any to use to activate Power Struggle. Then, don't forget, Decisive Strike is one of the better survivor perks and it has a very similar function to this one. DS also doesn't need any other perks for it to work, where I feel like this one definitely does. Let's get into our video demonstration. This is what it will look like when you have this perk and 25% of wiggle progression. Let's take a closer look. You can see that there is now the added option of pull down for the pallet. If this option pops up and you activate Power Struggle, you will stun the killer. Then, I also want to note that you can tell if this perk is activated and has enough wiggle progression by looking to see if the perk is lit up in the perk window. Then, I'm going to use Power Struggle, hit the pallet stun, and be freed from the killer's grasp. Then, I wanted to give you a second opportunity to see what this perk looks like when you activate it. Let's take a look from the killer's perspective. I pick up a survivor who has flip-flop and already has the wiggle progression needed for this perk to activate, and I walk them through the God pallet, which they throw down on me. The killer is going to get the notification on the left side of the screen with the perk icon that lets them know that the survivor used Power Struggle. Then, the most common way I see this perk working is I pick up a survivor on a pallet and they immediately slam it back down on me since they had flip-flop and over 25% of wiggle progression as soon as they were picked up. Let's get into our video examples. Starting off, I do go down on a pallet, but as you can see, I don't get to the threshold before the killer walks away and I get easily hooked. This perk simply isn't going to work every time, and that is very important to note. Now, I'm going to be in an awkward situation. What should I do? Throw down the pallet and run, or hope the killer slugs and use it for this perk? I end up opting to leave the pallet and try to use this perk. This decision appears to be wise. I could use my Unbreakable to get back up, but since I know the killer slugs, I want to save it for later if I need it. The killer is going to end up walking by. I have flip-flop, and I am almost completely recovered, so I have the 25%, and as soon as I'm picked up, boom, I use Power Struggle. I immediately slam the pallet on the killer, and I get away. Here, I am finishing a generator, then try to be a bit cheeky by dead harding through the killer, and let's say that didn't go according to plan exactly. But what does go according to plan is the Unbreakable play I set up earlier. The killer is going to immediately slug, and I'm able to pick myself up out of the dying state and eventually get the hatch. As you can see, it was a pretty wise idea to use Power Struggle the first time and save Unbreakable for later. In our next example, no Unbreakable, but I do have Tenacity and Flip-Flop, so I can crawl and recover at the same time and hopefully make my way to a pallet. Now I am going to be downed, and the killer knows that someone is on their totem and decides to go for them instead of pick me up and hook me. It's very early on in the game, so I know a bunch of pallets are still going to be standing, and I find my way to one. However, look at how long I'm in the dying state and just sitting on this pallet. You can see that I have been here for quite a long time since the killer did not exactly know where I went due to Tenacity, but they finally find me. I'm still on this pallet and I can immediately use Power Struggle to free myself. Now later on, I'm going to be downed again by the nurse. However, what happens again? They go to slug, and I spot a pallet to crawl to and try to use power struggle. But this time, it's gonna go a bit different. Look at my bleed out timer. You can see that I'm already significantly low and I'm going to be in a bit of trouble. The nurse ends up hooking my teammate right next to me, and the nurse saw me while I was on this pallet when they were on a chase near me. However, what are they going to do? They know I have this perk, so they're just not going to pick me up. They are comfortable with just letting me bleed out, and that's what happens. And if you think this perk is amazing and don't want to hear any negatives about it, you need to turn off the video now because it's going to go downhill from here. Here, I think I am close enough to use power struggle, but no. You have to be right on the center of the pallet and not next to it. Keep this in mind if you're going to use this perk. The perk description says drop nearby pallets, but clearly I was not nearby enough. That being said, I do use my flip-flop and I am able to wiggle off still. Here, I am in an awkward situation. I don't know if I should save the pallet late in the game for a power struggle play or throw it down to try to escape. This hesitation is long enough for me to throw it down, but I still get hit through it, which definitely sucks. But there's still hope. I end up getting to 25% and the killer looks like they're going to walk through a pallet, but then they end up walking around it. Then I know the basement is in the shack here and the god pallet is up. Clearly I'm going to get my power struggle play, but no. The killer opts to hook me on the outside, and this obviously sucks because most smart killers just naturally negate this perk by not walking through pallets. Finally, I want to take you through a typical game with this perk. I get downed here by the Demogorgon, they pick me up, then they take me to the hook, and there wasn't even a chance to go through a pallet. This is a reality of the majority of times where you are downed and hooked by a killer. Then I'm going to be downed on a pallet and my eyes light up a bit, but there is no hesitation from the killer. The killer picks me up, and guess where I'm going? I'm going to the basement hook. Next, I go down in the shack. I'm saving this pallet for power struggle or my teammate to get me off the killer's shoulders the old-fashioned way. My teammate does end up throwing down the pallet, but to no avail. The killer ends up putting me right on my death hook. I had 2 chances to use this perk when I went down on a pallet, but no dice. Let's give this perk a grade. Power struggle is a 2.5 out of 10. Yes, it is entertaining to get this perk to work, but it is certainly a gimmick perk. It is going to be very hard to get consistent activations out of power struggle, and you have to know that if you're going to use this perk. It is more for fun than strategy. Then, something important to note is, power struggle lacks viability on its own. You're always going to need at least flip-flop and probably another perk with it to make sure that it works. So, it's a bad perk on its own, then you're also going to have to use 2 more perk slots on it in all likelihood to make sure that it's viable. Then, maybe Power Struggle could have been a 3.5 or a 4 if another perk named Decisive Strike didn't already exist. But Decisive Strike does exist, and it's one of the better Survivor perks. It doesn't need other perks, it's far more likely to activate, and it was one of my first perk reviews, and it's still as good then as it is now. That being said, don't let your memes be dreams. If you want to troll a killer and you want to have some fun, maybe Power Struggle is your pick, but it won't find its way in many good Survivors rotations. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like. If you want to check out more perk review, make sure to look for the links in the description and visit my channel to subscribe. I also stream twice a week on Twitch if you want to stop by. Take it easy.